My name is Kim Lanfear, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Apparo Solutions. We have a record number of people in our CXO Tech Insights tonight, and we're very glad that you're here. We're close to 90 people in the room, so that's pretty exciting. And all of your attendance, everybody in the room, you're lifting our mission. And we are a nonprofit, if you haven't heard of us, in the greater Charlotte area. We work in a 13-county region and of contiguous counties to Mecklenburg, and we serve over 500 area nonprofits in a population of nonprofits that we would be serving that could be 600, maybe 700 nonprofits. So we serve a lot of the nonprofits in this community, most of them, and we do that by lifting them through technology and business process improvement and empowerment. We lift them with education, with solutions, and with the wonderful skills that you in this room so generously volunteer from your tech and business process expertise to bring back to the community. So we're grateful for you being here. Our mission does what it does because you come to events like this, and we're so grateful for you. So tonight, which is untypical of a CXO Insight, first of all, first night we've ever used the term CXO Tech Insights. We have renamed our CIO Host Council, I'm getting to the CXO Tech Council, and brought in a whole nother group of leaders to walk alongside us, as well as the CXO Tech Ambassadors group. So we're very glad to have all these people alongside us. And as a result, we have renamed this to the CXO Tech Insight. So welcome to the first official renamed Tech Insight. And normally, when it's not COVID, we have an impact breakfast where you all generously come and you listen to the impact that your advocacy and your donations and your time and expertise make possible in the community. Can't do that this year. So instead, we're putting what we normally do in that event here in the beginning of this event, which is our Tech Exec Award. 2 years ago in 2019, Apparo initiated the Tech Exec Award. And I am behind on my slides. I should have let you do this, Karis. The Tech Exec Award is to celebrate a great philanthropic technology executive through this Community Impact Award. Our first winner in our inaugural year is pictured here. She's Courtney Ramey, the Executive Director of JB & Consulting. And in 2020, we had the wonderful opportunity to partner with Charlotte Eno, and they encouraged us to add a Tech Entrepreneur Community Impact Award to celebrate tech executives who is not only philanthropic, but also the founder of an organization here in the greater Charlotte region. Both of these awards were judged by a panel of 10 esteemed local executive technology leaders and nonprofit leaders. And they sought the applicants who best embodied our award criteria, which is listed here on the slide and you've been reading. Our award winner not only receives the personal benefit and honor of having this award in their home and on their curriculum vitae, but also a $5,000 worth of pro bono support for a local nonprofit of their choice. And last year, in 2019, Courtney selected the Project Life Movement, and they are a nonprofit that improves the cure ratio of cases of leukemia, lymphoma, and sickle cell disease. We are thrilled to have been able to partner with them. Not only did Courtney choose them, but by choosing them, she introduced them to us. We had not been familiar with them before. And so we helped ensure that they have hardware and training that they need to be able to continue their important work remotely during the pandemic. And now to introduce and announce our winners for this year, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Kat Francis, who is the National Marketing and Events Director of our Community Impact Award partner, American Eno. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kat.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here tonight. Super excited to be partnered with Apparo. I'm part of American Eno. I'm the parent organization to local publications in 14 cities, including Charlotte Eno, and we are extremely proud of our local partnerships like this. So thank you, Apparo. One other thing I just wanted to add, if you do business in any of our 14 markets, Eno is happy to help you connect. And if you know a city that needs an Eno, let us know. All right, so who's ready for the big moment? The Tech Entrepreneur finalists presented in alphabetical order are Todd Bulow, Principal and Founder, Dual Butte Partners, Betsy Hauser, CEO and founder, Tech Talent South. Dr. Sharon Jones, CEO and founder, the Dot Consulting and Dottie Rose Foundation. And last but not least, Brian Kelly, CEO, Cloud Genera Inc. And now the winner is, get ready for it. Congratulations to our 2020 Tech Entrepreneur Community Impact winner, Todd. So everybody, let's give him a round of applause. Cheers. Didn't you see my drink? Congratulations, Todd, from hosting basketball camps for children with special needs to donating over 4 million meals to those facing hunger. Todd exemplifies community impact. He not only volunteers and donates, but fosters the same spirit at Dual Boot Partners, the software company he founded, recruiting his staff to support nonprofits across our community. Running Works recently named him a top connector for his ability to recruit volunteers and to help end homelessness. So thank you so much for all that you do for our community, Todd. Of course, Charlotte Enno loves you too. And back to Kim now. She's showing off Todd's award.
Todd, we're so excited for you. We will get this award to you in the mail. It's a little heavy, but we'll get it to you. So now, I have the distinct award honor again of introducing one of our wonderful partners here in town, Daryl Thompson, who is the Senior Vice President and CIO of Information Technology at Coca-Cola Consolidated and an Apparo CXO Tech Council host. He will review the finalists and announce the winner of our Tech Exec Community Impact Award. Two of them. Tech Entrepreneur was just awarded, and now we're looking at the Tech Exec.
Thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with everybody. It's exciting to hear that you guys have 90 folks in attendance tonight. This is a big session, doing it virtually. So I'm excited to be here and take part in this event. So as a longtime supporter of Apparo, I'm excited just to celebrate the dedication of both the technology and the community impact that all these folks have been involved with. Tech Exec finalists presented in alphabetical order are Kelly Atkinson, General Manager of Slalom, Randy Alexander, Director and Technology Center, and Elizabeth Austin, the CIO and EVP of Curvature. And give us a drum roll. The winner is Elizabeth Austin with Curvature. So congratulations, Elizabeth. We're excited. Elizabeth's dedication to the power of technology and philanthropy is demonstrated in her dedication, support, and service to STEM organizations in our community, like the Charlotte Region SIM and the Charlotte Area Technology Collaborative. Through her volunteer leadership role, she raises funds and dedicates time to support organizations such as the Philippa Berry High School, E2D, and Goodwill University. As the CIO and EVP of Curvature, Elizabeth is a leader in Curvature Cares, employee community outreach initiatives. Congratulations again, Elizabeth. And now back to Kim, who will show off the award and introduce us to the CXO Insights Forum.
Here we go, showing off the award. Todd and Elizabeth, we are so excited to honor the work that you do in the community. Your application was so impressive, as were all the finalist applications. You all on this call tonight have amazing partners in philanthropy in this community, particularly these individuals tonight who've been named as finalists and winners who do so much to lift our community. And we are really, really honored to honor them. So thank you. Now we're going to get back to our show. And I have another introduction to make, and then I'm going to be pretty quiet. I get to introduce Alex Hesterberg of Delphix. Delphix is our sponsor of tonight's CXO Insight, and Amazon Web Services is our sponsor of the overall series of CXO Insight panel discussions this year. And so I have an honor of introducing Alex, who will tell you what we're going to be talking about today and introduce our wonderful panelists. Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Much appreciated. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Congrats to Todd and Elizabeth on your awards. What we're going to get a chance to do today are speak with three panelists about the topics of artificial intelligence. Now, just a little bit about me and why the heck I should be talking to these esteemed people. I am very, very lucky to be the Chief Customer Officer of Delphix. Delphix, if you haven't heard about it, is a company that's been around about 10 and a half years, started in test data management and has been 100% focused on data, data ephemerality, data mutability, being able to programmatically take data from any place, any point in time, in any data source, and put it into the hands of data consumers anywhere. We see our purpose as being able to connect to and virtualize and accelerate data from any place. That could be a standard Oracle database, that could be mainframe, it could be Salesforce, it could be just something from NoSQL PaaS layers in AWS. And our consumers of data range from developers and testers and rehosters and replatformers all the way through to AI, ML, and data science teams. So we've seen this shift in the need for data and the consumers of data, the growing of that audience over the course of the last 10 years especially. And tonight, we get a chance to really focus a bit more on artificial intelligence and machine learning. The research is showing us that a lot of sectors, many sectors of business, are making these investments in AI and ML. And it's potentially widening the gap between those businesses that are more than taking the leap, but starting to master it, put it to work, and those that are adoption laggards. Hiring for AI skills across the 5 major verticals increased by 32% in 2020, and consumer behaviors likely affected consumer behaviors with the pandemic, and where tech and AI and ML was being put to work in order to operate in a pandemic world. And it really started to beg the question, and that's what's going to lead us into the panel today. Has AI become an equivalent of machine learning? Are AI and ML more accessible today? A number of services, including services offered by AWS, are making AI a little bit more affordable and accessible than before. So tonight we're going to explore that a little bit. And what I wanted to do was turn it over to each one of the panelists to actually introduce themselves. If you could, give your name, your title, the company you're with, and an answer to the first question of the night. And that is, how do you define AI? And what do you think about AI when it comes to your organization in particular? Kim, I don't know if there was an order we wanted to start with for the panelists.
There is not.
There is not.
I can start with it. I don't know if my last name alphabetically. So, Murali Bandaro. Hi, everybody. I'm Chief Information and Digital Officer at American Tire Distributors. It's approximately a $5 billion company here in Charlotte area. The headquarters in Huntsville, predominantly a supply chain distribution organization, but at the heart of it, we are a technology company, as well as every other organization or every company is trying to be. So I've been here for a few years, and I have the honor of driving although it's a bit of a buzzword, but digital transformation at ATD. It's a third year of it, and a tremendous amount of initiatives that we've been working through. So coming back to the question of AI, ML, and I've always considered ML to be part of machine learning. Is really a part of overall AI umbrella, artificial intelligence umbrella. And I just really want to share a personal story of AI in general. This was 25 plus years ago, and I'm dating myself here. My first job as a research scientist in an organization back in India, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, and we were actually working on some of the research work in AI space, specifically natural language processing, which is really a part of AI. And some of the things that at that time that we were working on, this was machine-assisted translation items. They are now part and parcel of commercial solutions that you see out there. Just one example is Google Translator, although it doesn't really translate exactly how you translate from one language to other, but it's pretty close. So that one, and over time, AI has become so prevalent in our day-to-day lives. The easiest example that I can think of is Google Maps. And I know Google Maps actually simulated the traffic jam by just sending all the traffic to one specific route. So those things can also happen. So I think on the personal side, there's it's very ubiquitous, whether we realize it or not. Recommendations that we see, all the personalized recommendations on all the shopping sites, those are all AI. In the corporate side, I think I look at it from two perspectives. One is really, security side. There's a lot of work happening in the solutions that identify your, email categorization, your, phishing identification and resolution, and they learn based on the data that as they have more data. And then, homegrown solutions that you could be developing, and I'll talk to the examples from my perspective, but down the line as we go to the further conversation. But really bringing solutions that have the AI capabilities, software as a service solutions, and then building these capabilities in house. So that's how I look at AI more broadly.
Excellent. Thank you, Murali. Much appreciated and welcome. Who do you have next? Arvi, would you like to go?
Sure. Hey guys, Arvi Rajasekharan, CIO for Enterprise Architecture at Ally. Think about this, so you asked for a definition of AI, in the simplest terms, anything where we can take maybe a process that is done by a human and replace it and bring some level of simulation of human intelligence into the process and do it using computers. That's, very simply, that's kind of what I think about with AI. And as Murali said, machine learning is one kind of AI, natural language processing, all of these kind of come under the AI umbrella. And, as we think about it at Ally, there's a lot of different opportunities where we are applying specific aspects of it, aspects of machine learning, mostly in the data space, but even chatbots and natural language processing and a few other capabilities. I think in the off late, the piece that is the most exciting is how different technologies have come about that have made AI and machine learning more accessible to the developers in any corporation. It requires specialization, it requires knowledge, but at the same time, there are so many tools that bring a lot of that to the masses, and that's a really exciting development. So I think the speed at which we see the implementation of machine learning and AI into different facets of our work is going to increase as time goes on.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Arvi. Welcome as well. And then John.
Yeah, hi. My name is John Garber. I'm the VP of Data and Software Engineering for Red Ventures. So for those who don't know, Red Ventures is a collection of digital brands that help consumers sort of make informed decisions. So we deal across a number of different verticals. We deal across health, higher education, financial services, telco, ISP providers, those sorts of things. We generally interchange AI and ML, and I would say actually we don't really use the term AI very much. We mostly refer to the whole suite of things as machine learning within the organization, and we generally think of it as the ability for machines to make decisions using historical outcomes to sort of predict future outcomes. And in a tactical sense, that might mean a consumer is on one of our web properties and we have reason to believe that they are trying to find the answer to some question. And we could run them through an experience created by a human and where everybody gets the same experiences, or you pick 5 or 6 different flavors and then people get like exposed to them. But in reality, the past users will exhibit patterns that machines will see that humans won't. So we let the machines watch the past users. And then when a new user comes in, we can, in real time, change up the experience based upon what we think the user might be interested in. And we do that across the board in almost all of our digital properties. We do it in a bunch of other places too. We do it with phone systems. We do it with who to send email to. We do it with content categorization, things like what is this website about, those sorts of things. But generally speaking, we have ML enabled decisionings on, I would say, 98% of our web properties at this point, after maybe 5 years into the process of sort of like developing these systems.
Excellent. Wow. Okay. You actually answered my next question pretty wholeheartedly there. That was, quite frankly, what is the state of AI initiatives, in your firm? And John, you were pretty clear on that. It sounds like you embarked on this better part of 5 years ago, and you found a multitude of application areas for. But Murali, going back to you, if you could take a step back and look at kind of the state of AI, less about where you might be using it, but what you're doing with it now versus what you think the potentials are going forward. What would you say your state is? Are you fairly far down the path and you think you're kind of like, like John was saying, 90%, 95% of the board across the board is being influenced or touched by AI or ML? Or are you more in the start or more in the middle? How would you assess where you're at right now in terms of state?
Yeah, so we're definitely not where John is, but at the same time, and I was, this year I was creating my 3-year strategy, and obviously there are usual items that you see in all technology strategy, digital strategy approaches. A broad theme that I made sure that as a team and as an organization we are thinking about is across everything that we are doing. AI ML is like a broad running theme. Like, where can we leverage these capabilities, right? And I know that sometimes AI can be like, oh, I have this toy now. That where do I apply this, right? So not really from that perspective or a shiny toy standpoint, but I would say that in our B2C world, we do machine learning. We use machine learning to do very personalized recommendations. So that's one example that I can clearly think of that we use. And we have I know RB kind of touched briefly on a lot of the data analytics or the predictive analytics that we are working through. It kind of shows up heavily there from where we are, and we are a bit ahead on that side of the fence in terms of applying AI and ML across the board. One thing I would say that we actually developed an in-house cloud-native solution for our integration platform. And I'm just giving you the background so that you understand where we applied this. We didn't think that we're going to do this, but anyway. So it runs in the cloud environments, and I'm sure Amazon has that. We're using a different one, but with cloud providers now you have the capability to do IAC, infrastructure as code, right? So now you can kind of start servers, add capacity, scalability, all that, as you want. It's like a few lines of code for developers. So to solve some of the scalability specific items in our ecosystem, now we started applying basically, call it deep learning or machine learning, so that automatically detects, where your systems are now going to run into a capacity challenge, potentially 15 minutes down the line or 30 minutes down the line, depending upon all the data a system has. And it automatically takes the action that it needs to do, add whatever additional components that it needs. So that's like the core technology example. One other thing that I would add is I know that there's a debate out there: is RPA really AI or is just automation, right? But I know that some folks kind of consider RPA, and especially if you're running like unattended bots, right? Bots that are running on their own. So we kind of got on that journey a few years ago of developing both attended and unattended bots, specifically in our finance area, our AR/AP area. And it has come out quite handy for us to really automate a lot of things that we used to bring 15, 20 temps every 3 months to do some of these functions. Now we have bots running. They're scheduled, they run at a given time, and they do the work that that needs to be done. And these functions were done by humans or temps. It used to take them like 13 to 14 minutes per transaction. Bots actually do it in like less than a minute. So I know. So to give you, to answer your broad question, I would say I would call ourselves still in the early adopter stage right now. But at the same time, I think, we do have a good bit of experience doing this, and then how do we take it to the next level? So early and trying to get to the middle. How about that?
Got it. Makes sense. And Arvi, so same kind of question. Your state of kind of, I'd say AI ML adoption, but also would love your lens on, do you find you're doing most of it in-house, or have you started down the path of leveraging any kind of external services that might be offered by cloud providers like AWS,
Yep.
or even IBM? Love your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that we're kind of in the middle of the overall adoption of machine learning and AI. So we did start pretty early. About 5 years ago, we launched an Alexa skill and NLP-based capabilities. We've been doing some level of machine learning in the data space for quite a bit of time. And most of our early attempts were bespoke, and that required a lot of expertise that was needed there. What we're finding ourselves in a space now is it's expanding, and as I mentioned earlier, we're starting to democratize the usage of that. So what do I mean by that? Step one is a more thoughtful approach to our data strategy to get all of our data accessible so you can go back and look at patterns that develop over time. The second is bringing in a variety of tools that can help the situation. Starting with more commodity things where a citizen capabilities. So you can have a business user using tools like Automation Anywhere, for example, to run standard models to see if patterns are emerging, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you have research engineers with PhDs that are developing custom models with R and other things that are looking for very specific optimization. So we have all of that, and we're applying different things in different spaces. And as my fellow panelists mentioned, we have use cases that kind of go across the board. In our infrastructure area, how do we detect anomalies and react to them, or predictive analytics around that, all the way to natural language, to looking at next best action for customers, and how do we understand customers' patterns and what they could be calling us about? How do we get proactive about interactions with our customers when we see them getting to certain points in a particular journey? Those are just some examples. And he asked a question around, do we do all of that in a custom manner, or do we use products? We absolutely think there's space for both, and we certainly use a lot of companies and providers in our experience. Like, for example, Amazon SageMaker is definitely a capability that we use quite heavily in there. I mentioned Automation Anywhere. So there's definitely a lot of those type of tools. Any place where we can help accelerate the adoption of machine learning capabilities with our development or our business users, we want to use capabilities and tools. And when you find the right opportunity where true customization and going above and beyond could help, then we can take it to the lab or take it to the specific experts, and then further build from there.
Makes total sense. John, so in your experience, you're 5 years in, you guys have made really, really good progress in terms of adoption. Was there there weren't as many services 5 years ago as there are today. Are you using a mix as well? Have you found that there was an evolution of going from bespoke to leveraging some services that might have been more commercially available, or are you more heavily bespoke still?
We are a bit of mix, and really depends upon the complexity, I guess. So when we started, the services weren't as available. So we had the general tendency of sort of like all the folks in the engineering world, and we will just build our own, because clearly we must be able to build our own better than anybody else. So we built a custom, custom built like training and scoring systems. We gave them names and we productized them, and we used them to internal customers inside the Red Register property. We have since, I say maybe in the last year, to build your own means you also need to keep up with the latest in sort of the methodologies. Those things in machine learning are still changing all the time. So to invest in bespoke stuff also means to invest over long term to keep up. And what we have found recently is that we will sort of siphon off, especially in proof of concept sort of situations where we're trying to understand whether ML is actually going to provide some predictive value. We will quickly spin that up in SageMaker. There's another application called Data Robot we use, but they sort of like let us really quickly sort of get to, is it worth it? And then if we can get our head around that, then we might make a bigger decision on, well, at what scale would we be doing this? And then it becomes sort of like our performance and cost and all these other decisions as to whether or not we leverage our internal tech or we just let it ride in the service.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes total sense. So with that in mind, I'd initially wanted each one of you to kind of take on, people, process, technology, strategy, sort of what was the learnings as you went through that. I actually want to skip to because you all kind of mentioned that a little bit. Well, let me ask this one question. And Murali, I'll go back to you. The people element. So have you made a demonstrable change or noticeable change in your organizations, how you're hiring, how you're engaging for, even though you're leveraging some services now externally, is the profile of person you're hiring, has that changed and evolved as you've adopted more of the AI and ML services?
I would answer it two ways. If I look at our data space, right, and our advanced analytics space, that is definitely the case. So we are looking at folks who have that experience, who have done that, work on the predictive modeling. But for the rest of the, other areas, if I pick like, digital and other normal IT functions, we haven't really created that as a broad agenda, if you will, to focus our hiring on people with specifically AI ML skills. But like I said, when we were creating the strategy this year, we kind of made sure that, it's really announcing to the rest of our team, right, that these are critical functions and capabilities that we need to develop. And eventually it's going to be a mix of, solutions and mix of in-house, but take our internal team to the next level from that perspective. So we haven't really done from a broad hiring, but in the data and analytics space, absolutely.
Got it. Arvi, Murali actually mentioned something earlier, and I had it listed in the questions that I wanted to share with each of you. But the shiny object syndrome. So when your teams have spent, and John, I definitely want your take on this after Arvi, when your teams have spent time, if not years, building AI ML capability, we joke around sometimes that, if all you have is an AI ML hammer, everything looks like a nail. How are you avoiding shiny object syndrome? Are there controls you have in place? Are there specific profiles of initiatives or efforts that you want to sort of go after with AI ML? What's your thought process there?
Yeah, I have to share a joke first around the shiny object piece. So typically every year we do we go out to Silicon Valley, look at all the different companies that the VCs are putting in front of us. And about 5 years ago, everything was blockchain, and then there was a period where every company had ML attached to it. It's ML for this and ML for that and ML for that. And I think it was Greylock Partners. Someone said that any company that added ML to their strategy, automatically their valuations went up by 20 to 30%. So there's definitely a shiny object syndrome to any one of these emerging capabilities that come up, and then the hype curve goes down. And I think with ML, we're a little bit past the hype curve. I think generally organizations understand where to apply ML, and we have to, at least what we try to do is try to focus on a business case, test, experiment, see if you can prove the value of using machine learning in a specific space before we expand it. So to me, it all comes down to test, evaluate, experiment, and then scale up. And you have to prove your value. Is machine learning able to, for example, speed up a process or open up more opportunities than the normal process does? And there are ways to quickly identify that without having to spend too much time. I mentioned automation anywhere earlier. I meant data robots, but those those are the type of tools that you can use to quickly identify if there's an opportunity, if there's a lift, and then you can build a proper business case and go implement that.
Got it. John, same question. Is there anything that are there any sort of controls or any guidelines you follow in terms of not trying to apply AI to everything? You sounds like you're pretty far down the road though.
Well, I mean,
maybe everything is an AI. Maybe everything is a nail.
well, no, and it's probably different to say that we might try ML for like most problems to see if they're predictive in nature or can outperform something. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they always work. And actually, in a lot of cases, they aren't any better. So some of the getting used to how much to invest is to basically set goals for like when you recognize that there's actually no material value to using it. And like Art was talking about, the rise of the services, the sort of like commoditization of it, make it pretty easy to sort of like get yourself to like, is it worth the deeper dive pretty quickly, and usually with relatively with folks who are sort of new. You don't need PhDs to basically vet some ability for a model to predict something. Like you can do that with a someone with a technology background. We get a lot of people fresh out of school who come out of computer science degrees, who are interested in data and interested in machine learning. And there's a little bit of ramp up time, obviously, but like using any other tool, it is the use of the tool that like sort of like we use it. So it's not super expensive. There are general things about the data sets which you can do even prior to that. So for instance, the data needs to be there for the model to learn anything. So if you aren't comfortable that the data is of the quality, you don't need to bother. Another thing we look at is, machines are good at doing things when there are lots and lots of choices that you do many, many times. So if I have an opportunity to show 3 things, it is unlikely that I could test if order 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, or 3, 2, 1 is better. I can do that in an automated testing tool. I don't need to necessarily apply a machine to do that. But if I have hundreds of choices, the probability that the machine is going to find some meaningful feature that drives predictive is much higher. So the wider the scope of the data set is usually one indicator of whether or not you should bother to apply models to it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you. Murali, do you have a line you draw or a profile you're looking at when you're looking at capability versus opportunity? Or are there any risks that you and the team look at when potentially making the decision to pursue AI or not?
So again, sometimes, and everybody said that the shiny object syndrome happens, right? And you're trying to solve every problem because, as you know, you can apply something there. But and this is no different than any new technology that comes up, right? When initially automation came, like, do you want to automate everything? Is there value in automating something? So I think, I would say that at least, based on our experience, those are the practical questions that we would ask ourselves. Like, and I'll give you an example, so we have a lot of space in warehouse, right? So how do we do picking in a warehouse? And we have 140 distribution centers, right? And, can we optimize the process? A default process comes out of our ERP, right? Now you can take the process and say, it's working. Now I apply this additional predictive modeling with all the current data that I have, with everything that's happening on a given distribution center or warehouse. And you see a 15% gain on efficiency. That's something that's valuable. So it's really test and learn. I know John kind of briefly touched on that, right? So some cases you will find that it's not worth it. It's not worth optimizing it. Even if no matter what you do, you're going to see like a 1% gain. Well, the cost of doing that optimization, providing all the data it requires to optimize your process is probably not worth it. So, those are the decision-making criteria that you would use. And it's no different than anything in any other decision that you're making from a technology standpoint.
Totally get it. Get it from a technology standpoint. That's good insight. Arvi, what I'd love to get your lens on being, especially in the financial world, right? So we see a lot of customers that, especially in fintech, in financial services, they are looking to leverage AI, but at the same time, they need to have baselines and controls, and data needs to be clean and auditable. What are some of the things that you've been doing, or talk to us about kind of controls, compliance? What are the things on your mind when adopting AI and ML?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Especially being in a regulated industry, we take this very seriously, and we have regulators that also audit us and just make sure that we're doing a good job with it. Maybe starting by talking about what are the risks, right? If you have machine learning that is not explainable, you could, so we call it explainable AI or explainable machine learning. You need to have a clear explanation of what are all the data sets you look at and how you define how decisions are being made, because you're taking the human out of the loop.
Right.
So it's important to know how those decisions are being made, so there is no bias in these decisions. There was a major news that came out maybe 6 months ago, where I think there were startup companies that are looking to lend using different criteria, and they were looking at alternate data sets to see if someone it's a potential to lend to them, and they were looking at universities and where someone went to school. On the surface, that looks like a good idea, but where someone goes to school has a lot of other things behind it, and automatically those machine learning models are biasing their decision towards one side. And similarly with facial recognition, you would have seen that facial recognition for people of color is not as good as facial recognition for the general population. So there are biases with different type of machine learning, right? So from what we do being in a regulated industry is we only introduce models into the ecosystem where we can clearly explain it, and we have a model governance process that fully regulates, validates, audits, and publishes that to regulators. So we're more careful than other companies, but we have to be, because we deal with people's money.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's really good. And again, different verticals are going to be subject to different regulatory compliance, and especially as you go around the world and you start getting things like CCPA in the States and California and GDPR. All of these, I have to imagine, are becoming increasingly critical when being able to use this and have it be explainable. That was really good. So now I want to sort of take a step back from I don't be retail. I'm not going to be not retail. I'm going to be vertical agnostic. Let's talk about the data itself. And I'd love to take just a few minutes and talk about data lakes. And for a long time, the sort of data lakes almost came across as sort of like a panacea, or they were perceived as a panacea for making sure you get the most data from the most places, and it in many cases was perceived as like a data answer. Are your organizations, John, we'll go back to you, are your organizations leveraging data lake or data lake concepts? And if so, and if not, like, are you seeing any changes or trends in that particular space today?
Yeah, so we very much have a data lake, and it is generally the source of most of the training information for our models. It's funny that you say that, because it is more complex. So we sort of started this like 5 years ago in the way you might expect, which was we had the opportunity to get data. So we got it, and we didn't really know what we were going to do with it. So the plan was, well, we should just get all of it, and we'll shove it in the data lake, and then we will mine it and figure out how to use it later. But what's important is we got to get it and sort of like standardize it first. So we did all that. We built all the systems to get that. And then what we found is we were often searching for very small pieces in the like data ocean. Right. So then we started like segregating the data lake into these ponds because they were too expensive to search. It took too long to go find the things you wanted to. So we started to separate them out and that nature. So all that to say, it sort of changed our perspective on, we use the data lake, and it is the primary source of how we train models, but we are much more selective about what we put into it in order to sort of like mitigate this giant expanding cost. I mean, we love AWS, don't get me wrong. We don't always love the bill at the end of the month. And it is very, very easy to suddenly find yourself with a giant invoice from S3 for Amazon if you're not thinking carefully about like what you're putting in there, how long you're keeping it, who has access to it. Those sorts of things are super important to the data strategy.
Yep, totally makes sense. And by the way, for everybody who's joined and online, please feel free, if you have any questions at all for our panelists, you can put them into the chat. I have a million questions for them, so I'm going to keep going unless somebody actually types a question in. There will be no shortage of questions, but we do want to make sure that we're capturing your lens and your feedback and your comments here. Murali, same kind of question. Where are you with your sort of data strategy, data management? Is it data lake, data oceans, and data ponds? I'm gonna write that down, John.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that comment going forward.
Or data swamp.
Yes.
That is a real term, by the way. So yes, we do have enterprise data lake. And honestly, I think we had to go there a few years ago when we started doing advanced analytics functions. And, anytime you have a team like that solving, problems like that, you need a tremendous amount of data. And traditionally, organizations have this data locked up in legacy systems, disparate systems, so on and so forth. So how do you how do you free that up, and how you make sure that people have access to that? You can't really give access to transactional systems. Only other thing that you have is data warehouses, which mostly did like operational reporting and other kind of corporate reporting, right? Now you take that and then all the external data that you might need, right? Pricing data from the industry or other trends, or in some cases it could be weather patterns, so on and so forth. So so we do have it. Now we haven't reached at a place where other than some very specific scenarios where we use microservices to make some certain decisions, we take the data specifically that is required for a microservice, that sits with the service itself. Other than those kind of scenarios, we haven't really taken a data pond kind of approach yet. But I know the reason I use the word data swamp for a reason. We were getting into that place where the data that coming in, unless you have the right governance and right checks and balances and data quality measures in place, is you're going to get all sorts of data there, and then your decision won't be accurate. So once we implemented enterprise data lakes, then we started on the journey. Actually, it was a bit of a reverse order, but anyway, putting an entire data management process and data governance aspects. So also taking some MDM approaches, although that's been out there in the industry for a while. But how do you take that master data and make sure that you have all right set of controls, right set of quality checks, and so on and so forth in place? So that's where we are in that journey.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And so, Arvi, so going back over to you, assuming that you have some kind of a data lake, pond, swamp, or ocean of some kind, are there sort of any practices around data treatment, data quality that you and the team have assessed and implemented over time, and that you've seen work for you?
Yeah, I think the key is data governance, right? Without proper data governance or being intentional about what data is part of the data lake, how much we're keeping, how that's connected to other data sets, making it discoverable, seeing how much the data is being used. And if you don't have governance around all of that, as Murali put it, it'll become a data swamp. And I think all of us in some part of our journey got to a point where it was probably getting closer to a data swamp before governance takes over. But a strong governance practice really helps, being more intentional about the types of use cases you're trying to solve, and being intentional about what data you're ingesting to solve those use cases is important. So being intentional is another key aspect. And most of our data journey is based on our use cases. We're looking at the different opportunities we have and developing use cases we want to attack with the data lake and machine learning tools on top of it. And just having that strategy overall makes us intentional about what data goes in, what frequency, what level of quality, the modeling of the data, and just all of that helps.
Got it. So, and that makes a ton of sense. I mean, data governance as kind of those fundamental pillars of the data that comes in, how it's treated, so it can be ready to get properly operationalized, which kind of gets me to the next section. And John, I'll start with you. Even if you have the data governance all set up, there's the operational aspect of it. So you've got teams of people, usually it's not just one individual, that are extracting this data, they are concatenating this data, all for a variety of purposes. They might be feeding AI, ML training, algorithm training programs. There could be other inspections that they're doing of the data to make sure it's not, garbage in, garbage out. Have you noticed any operational challenges with people being able to sort of work with the data and put it to good use, even if you have a good governance policy in place?
Yeah. So yes and no, but it's maybe slightly different. So one of the tenets that we spend a lot of time sort of evangelizing is the value of structured, immutable data, right? When we're creating, it is important for us and for the ability to use a training that the people think about what the data is and how it's formed prior to actually starting to collect it. And that gets you a long way out of the world of finding the data and smushing it together and transforming it on the post-processing end. So if you can get it in reasonably structured ways, that minimizes the operational aspect. We have intentionally created immutable data. So it is important. So for instance, I'll give you a real world example. We will get a list of sales from a partner that we will work with, and they will say, here are the 20 people who purchased product X, and here's how much it costs. And for that, we earn some revenue. And then we will inject that into a system, because those are the buyers and they become the basis for a lot of our sort of like machines to recognize it's like, these are the valuable people because they were the ones who bought the thing. So what do you know about them? But 2 days later, the partner will come back and say, we were wrong. 3 of those people didn't actually buy it, and I forgot to give you 2. So if you go and change the original records, you have sort of invalidated everything that you have used them for up to that part. So the immutable nature of thinking of terms like more like a bank record transactionally, there is a debit and there is a credit sort of concept, and like everything that you learn becomes a unique event, and then you go and collect all the events. So if you think of things like that ahead of time, it certainly makes the operational tasks easy. We did not think of those things ahead of time, so we spent almost a year and a half trying to undo them after we started. And then most of the operational things that we deal with now are sort of the access control. We want very much to move quickly. And because of that, people tend to, think of data like SQL data. So like, I just want to give people access to the data and let them query what they want, and they will go find out of it. And the good part of that is you can very quickly like let people go and find the data that they need and use it. The down part of that for us operationally is that we let everybody, like hundreds of people, all use the data. And if they use it wrong, they move it around unintentionally. We mix it up and put it in the wrong places, and then we sort of mix together. We run breach of contract. So like we spend a bunch of time, much more in sort of like controlling policies around who can get access to the data and how we annotate it in such a way that lets us know when we're doing the right things with it in terms of operational flow, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll go to you, Murali, and then Arvi, I love your perspective too. Guardrails and insulating the business from, I guess bad decisions, bad treatment of data. Like, have you run across in the last couple of years, Murali, we'll start with you, any kind of best practice guardrails to have when it comes to access control, when it comes to users, touching and manipulating the data?
Yeah, when we started on this journey, and some of our focus was on our customers. So, we manage and support and provide some of the advanced analytics services to our customers. So security was always top priority. Make sure that we're not mixing data sets, right? And I know there are industry compliance objectives that you can use. We always had the SOC 2, which is an industry compliance, just to kind of make sure that you have all the checks and balances. And it's very broad from a service organization standpoint, but specifically if you apply that to data, that becomes like really important. So that one, you're making sure that your data sets are not mixing across customers. Your one customer absolutely doesn't want to have their data be visible to somebody else, right? Big no-no. So kind of, building that from the get-go was important. The one thing I would say, though, which we did not do and we are kind of working towards right now is two things. Some of it, it's really sounds simple, but like a business glossary, right? I'm talking about internal focus now. You have tremendous amount of data. You have lots of data sets. So, when you open it up for, self-service and data democratization concepts, how do I know what the data represents if I'm a business, like a citizen developer, right? So the data lineage of understanding where the data comes from and what it really means becomes like so much more important. Now, we're not there yet. We're actually working actively right now to make sure that we develop all that. And then I think that in turn would eventually facilitate us with natural language query and so on and so forth. So I think from a security standpoint, we were, from get-go, we had a tremendous focus on that. But when it comes to some of the governance aspects, which I talked about from a data lineage and just a broad understanding, I think that's something that we're working on right now.
Got it. So Ari, it makes a lot of sense. You started with security and now you're sort of looking at governance. Arvi, from your perspective, have you seen any practices or you implemented any that have given you a bit more control, no pun intended, around access control and treatment of data by different individuals? Obviously, if you got a security focus first, you're kind of looking at locking stuff down, less on data governance. Did you have a similar philosophy? Were you security first and then governance versus security, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's similar to what Murali said. The things I would add is one, there are certain data sets that we want access for only a specialized group, right? For example, HR might look at employee data. That's also in the data lake, but that might be segmented, so only they can look at it. So outside of the standard access control privileges, who sees what data, we also have a notion of segmenting certain types of data that only specialized people can look at. But we apply the same underlying technologies for all of that. So that's part A. And part B, we have this notion of a pipeline. So think of it like a dev model prod type deal. In the dev environment, with some of our sanitized data, we do want a little bit more access. So those discoveries can happen, the connecting of different dots can happen. But as those things start to take shape, we are very intentional about what goes into model and production. And there's a lot more governance and validation and making sure, are you connecting dots that shouldn't be connected? How are we thinking about it? So by the time things get into production, they're pretty rock solid, but we do want the ability to innovate and identify new opportunities where we want it in our development zone.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to go back to you with one question, especially because you're in the financial vertical. Not to say that it's not available, not mandatory in other verticals, but do your methods or controls and the way that you leverage data, do they have to be defendable, so to speak? Like, do you have to be able to point to, the criticality. Murali was mentioning the data glossary, that everybody understands what different data terms mean. If there's common understood nomenclature, we can point back to what it means. There's a control mechanism there. Is that part of like your reviews or your audits or your own internal audits as you go through how data is used and applied?
Yes. So we do have the concept of a data dictionary. We know the data, we know who has access to it. There's audit mechanisms, there's reporting, and all of that goes along with it. And different data and we have classifications of data. General terms in the finance industry. Everybody uses them. There's PII data. There's other data that is more confidential in nature. So we have different classifications of data, and then we also have access controls and then audit. So it's a multi-layered approach, but all of that is part of the equation.
Got it. Understood. John, I want to go back to you. I mean, you've made a lot of headway, especially over the last 5 years. Some lessons learned from the first 18 to 24 months. Have there been some of the applications of AI and ML? You can say ML. I think that was your more common nomenclature, that were just kind of semi mind-blowing, no brainers, the biggest opportunities where the company has done just very, very well, has been able to hit and exceed goals and expectations, more so than other applications.
Sure. There have been mind-blowing successes and then mind-blowing failures as well, depending on how you look at it. I think probably the most successful application that Red Ventures has had with machine learning is in regards to paid media, so search bidding terms. So we have lots of web properties. People are searching on their favorite search engine, and it is generating consumers that are going to those properties. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the paid media world, but effectively, like as a brand, you can pay money to bid to have your brand come back in. So we have a very distinct strategy for how you do that. And we use our most successful models figure out what the amount to bid in real time is for any particular term, for any particular person who's searched for that. That has by far been our most successful machine learning model. Drives significant revenue and performs significantly better than humans sort of like turning the knobs every day, looking at the performance of keywords and saying, oh, this keyword is working, so we should bid more on that, and like letting the machine effectively turn all the knobs.
And not to put you on the spot, would love to hear, maybe without any specifics, like where like it just did not go well, in whatever context you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So the funny story is that we wanted, and this actually sort of like happened recently. So we wanted to find people who were interested in 5G, sort of like a little bit before 5G was starting to become available. And we were going to predict that. And we had thousands of data points, and we had so many data points that we couldn't get the models to sort of like train and in reasonable amounts of time. And we went and we did this, we used some new tech, which is called embeddings, which is effectively like, rather than picking the data points that you think are important to teach them to have the model look at, you shove all of it in and you sort of encode it in a number. So you take everything you know and you sort of squeeze it down to a number, and then the machines will figure out which numbers are the good ones. So we built all of that. And then it turns out, after we built all that and ran all the stuff, the thing that determined out of all those 1,000 data points about whether somebody went 5G was how old the phone that they were browsing from was. Like, that was the answer. Seems obvious now, but we spent a couple months and a bunch of money like getting the machine to tell us the thing that you probably could have done, like just intuited yourself.
Well, I thank you for sharing that, and I know that was probably difficult.
Please do not share that outside or attach my name to it.
Nope, never happened. Murali, I'll go over to you. Again, you could do positives and negatives, but we'd love to get a sense of, what were some things that you applied, some applications of AI and ML that just was really, really, really went well.
I think the two that I briefly shared already, I think one is more technical example of our elasticity on the cloud environment. And it also, helps us with, scaling up and down and save money. When we don't need that capacity, we kind of take it down. And when we need it, we kind of, predictably identify that and we add it. So that's the whole point of having that, elasticity models in cloud computing, right? So that's definitely, a good success. I talked about our warehouse pick optimization, process optimization. And, we saw at least 15 to 20%, depending upon what's happening any given time in a warehouse, in terms of like how long it takes for a pick to complete from end to end. So once we applied, all the modeling that we did, it did 15-16% time reduction, which essentially translates into cost reduction. I cannot think of any specific, that is interesting to share from a failure standpoint, but I will tell you that, I'm sure we have spent countless hours on solving some problems using the data sets we have, which at the end of it, we said, okay, 1% optimization or 0.5% optimization, not worth it. But we did spend a good bit of time trying to get there, to get to that conclusion. And it's part of that whole test learn process. But there are a lot of examples like that.
Got it. Okay. And then Arvi, same question. We'd love to hear about some of the winnings as you applied AI and ML.
Yeah, one clear win is how our chatbots are lifting the load from our contact center agents. So we're in the process of deploying it in a large scale. So if you go to the mobile app and if you want to chat, and if you have specific questions, we have a chatbot that's front-ending a lot of those questions. And when it gets stumped, it will then take you to an agent who will then respond to you. So this is taking, the number of associates we need in the contact center dealing with chats down. The further implementation of this would be in our IVR channel, where when you call the 1-800 number, for most of the simple questions, what's my balance? Did my paycheck hit? What bills are due? All those kind of typical questions. I forgot my password, which is more than 50% of our calls. Those can be handled through automation, and that's a clear win. We're not fully done with the implementation of that. We're in the process, but we're already seeing massive lifts by doing that. The other one is just around identifying next best actions for our customers. Typically people are interested in certain actions as part of their journey, using the data to suggest the right actions for the customers. Let's say a CD is maturing and they, maybe you want to, renew your CD or look at doing something, whatever the goal is for them. The next best action is another area where we're seeing very clear wins.
Excellent.
Alex, if I may add one quick one, as I already said that whether you consider RPA as part of AI or not, but if you do, then we did have quite a bit of success on, especially on the ARAP side, and as every business can probably relate to it, right? When you have to provide proof of deliveries, and invoices get into disputed statuses. We used to spend quite a bit of money bringing in temps doing that. And there was once we put the bots, it was really successful. On the other end, I tried to use that same technology for user onboarding. And I told you that I did not have funny stories, but this is definitely a funny story. In IT, like you have to onboard users, right? So as a new person comes into or a contractor comes into, so we try to apply the RPA on that. It's a standard process generally, but I can tell you for various reasons, and compliance being one of the big ones, it was very difficult. If that process makes an error, right? How do you go defend that, right? It's not done by a person. If it's a human error, you can say, okay, I'm going to put a process control. If something happens in that process and you give access to a person that you're not supposed to, and something bad happens after that, what do you do? So anyway, I think in our testing of trying to implement RPA for onboarding, that was definitely a one that did not go well.
I appreciate you sharing that as well. This has been great. Gentlemen, I really appreciate your time tonight. And thank you for fielding. I got through about 70% of my questions. You guys provided such great answers. I am going to be sensitive to time and the rest of the evening. Kim, I'll hand it back to you. But I want to thank John, thank Murali, thank Arvi for their time tonight. I really appreciate it. Great answers and great insights.
Great conversation, and I hope you all will stay with us to go into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance to talk with one another, and the C-suite officers who are in the room with us this evening will be in each of those breakout rooms. Great conversation. Can't thank the panelists enough. Cannot thank Delphix for their leadership in bringing this panel together and their their conversation and sponsorship of this event. So we're grateful for them being in the room. And we are also grateful for Amazon Web Services for their sponsorship of the entire event. Before I turn it over to Brian Bach, who I'm not sure is still in the room, but if he is, I'm going to turn it over to him in a minute. I just wanted to leave kind of an impact moment. We've got some hard times around us and still ahead of us with COVID, and you are helping people in our community tonight and every time you engage with Apparo. There has been a threefold increase in the number of people in our community who are hungry and need food support. Loaves and Fishes could not have done the work that they do to meet that threefold, 300% increase in services without Apparo's partnership. There's been an increase in support needed for those who are abused and neglected as people are required to stay at home. Those individuals have also benefited from work that Apparo has done and you have done as community partners of Apparo to lift those lives and make those lives better. And finally, as it's easy to see, these are easy examples for me. These aren't ones that take me very long to reach into our shelves because COVID has been so devastating. There's homelessness increase because of COVID, because of evictions and inability to meet the needs of rent. And you have been part of the solution to make those services and lift those individuals in our community who are suffering this time. So I thank you. And I turn it over to Brian Bach, if he is still here in the room. I look.
Hey, Kim. Yeah,
You
I'm still
are.
here.
We're going to turn it over to you for a few words from our series sponsor.
No,
AWS.
not much. Just appreciation for the work that you and the team does today and just over the past couple of years through COVID, and that we're working on together in the future. We're really appreciative of the chance to support you guys how we can and so to support this series. Thanks to the panelists, thanks to Alex for hosting. It's a really great conversation and we like being a part of that. And we're really happy to be here to support Apparo, and just grateful to be a part of the team and supporting the organization. So thanks so much.
Thank you. As we start this new year, we are so grateful for everyone in this room.